Record and to mute everybody. That's good. Everybody's already muted. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah everyone. Inna alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lah wa man yudlil fala hadiya lah. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah wahdahu la sharika lah. Wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'd. Last week, what we talked about, Jazakallah khair, by the way, everyone, for joining us this morning. Last week, what I talked about was Iman and Islam and the difference between the two. And I also spoke about some of the ways during that lecture by which we can increase our Iman. And today's lecture that I decided upon is something that has been on my mind recently, and especially as related to the previous lecture. One of the methods with which I said that we should attempt to increase our Iman is by reading the Quran itself, Al-Quran Al-Kareem. Now, this is one negative aspect of the culture that we grew up in, is that the Quran is almost treated as if something that is to be almost like an incantation or some kind of magic spell that should be recited when somebody dies, or when somebody is born, or when somebody's about to die, or when somebody buys a house so that the jinn don't come in, etc. The Quran is treated almost as if it's some kind of magic spell. Whereas, in fact, the purpose of the Quran and the purpose of today's lecture is that the Quran should be read, and I want to emphasize for you, and I want to give you some of the methods with which you can attempt to at least engage with the Quran, not just read the Quran for yourself, but engage with the Quran. Now, I believe we did Surah Al-Fatiha in one of the previous lectures. I think 3 months ago, I already did Surah Al-Fatiha. And I'm going to do Surah Al-Fatiha again in today's lecture, because a reminder always benefits the believer. You guys are going to get benefit from it regardless, because we're supposed to be reciting Surah Al-Fatiha 5 times in every prayer a day anyway. So there is no harm in going over and Surah Al-Fatiha yet again. But the purpose, or the primary reason for today's lecture, is I want to give you some tools to how to engage with the Quran and how to read the Quran for your purposes. And if I can get you to read the Quran more than just its Arabic, but attempting to engage with it and attempting to ponder upon it and see how it applies to you, then I think I would have accomplished, and I believe I would have accomplished something wonderful. Is because the Quran has been relegated to, or at least in most of our lives, relegated to some corner of our house that only comes out when either somebody passes away, or somebody's born, or somebody buys a new house or a new business. But other than that, the Quran has almost little place in our lives. And that is something that I would like to remedy with today's lecture. So the purpose of today's lecture is I want to give you some of the methods, some of the ways in which you can start to not just read the Quran, but engage with the Quran, ponder upon it, and hopefully start to implement its teachings in your life and actually what it means to you. So first and foremost, a quick introduction of Al-Quran Al-Kareem. Just like we talked about last week, what were some of the things that we talked about last week? And among the 6 beliefs that we have to, as part of our Iman, in order to make sure that we believe what is Iman and the definition of Iman and what do we believe, one of the things that we believe in is, number 1, we believe in all the messengers, including our own messenger, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and all the messengers that came before them, including the books that were revealed to them. Which means we believe in the Torah, we believe in the Psalms, we believe in the Bible, and we believe in all the prophets that came before our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we believe in their books as well. But we also believe in the last and final revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is Al-Quran Al-Kareem. Now, what is the purpose of Al-Quran Al-Kareem? The Quran, or the Quran, comes from the word Qur'a, which means that which is recited. Now, the meaning of recitation, meaning of the word recitation, Qur'a, has multiple meanings. Number 1, its meaning is to actually recite out loud, which means to to say it with your tongue, not just think it in your mind, but also say it in your tongue, from your tongue, to recite it out loud. But another meaning of the word Qur'an, which is according to, I believe, either Abdullah ibn Mas'ud or Abdullah ibn Abbas, I don't remember off the top of my head right now, which is to follow step after step, to follow in its footstep, to follow its instructions. The Quran therefore means not just that which is recited, but also that which is followed, also that which is understood and acted upon. So Al-Quran Al-Kareem, the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, its purpose is multifold. Not just to be read and recited, but also to be acted upon. And if you remember, in one of our previous lectures, I talked about the 5 rights of the Quran. And the rights of the Quran is to be read, to be understood, to be recited, to be pondered over the meaning, to be memorized, and to be taught to others. Those are the rights of the Quran. So today, and obviously after reading and understanding, implementing it in our lives and to be taught to others, those are the rights of the Quran. So today what I want to do is I want to encourage you. If I can encourage you after this lecture, I'm glad you guys joined me for this lecture. And alhamdulillah, this is a very good way of at least making sure that we read some part of the Quran, or at least we do something related to the Quran every week, right? That's the purpose of these lectures. But I want to encourage you in your own time, in your own purpose, because throughout your life, you are going to need the Quran, whether you want to admit it or not. The reason is this life and the rest of the life that comes before you, or the life that you've already lived, is likely to be difficult. And one of the fundamental characteristics of the Quran, or the purposes of the Quran, is to provide healing to the heartbroken, or provide healing to those who are in pain. And basically, that's the way this life is meant to be. This life is meant to be a little bit difficult. This life is meant to be hard. It is not going to be heaven on earth. Not everything we want is going to come to pass. Things are going to be difficult. But what is the purpose of the Quran? To help us overcome those difficulties, and by remembering Allah, to not dwell on those difficulties, and to find some ease in our life through the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So today, I'm going to ask you, anybody who's listening to this, after this, I want you to open the Quran, and as the pointers I'm giving you today on how to read the Quran and how to ponder it, I want you to do it for yourself. You don't have to do a lot. I don't expect you to do an entire page, or even a juz, or even an entire page. It can be just one surah. Find the last juz, a very small surah, maybe surah, I don't know, Surah Al-Nas, Surah Al-Falaq, Surah Al-Ikhlas. Any of the last, the 30th juz is going to have some small surah for you to be able to read. And I want you to find those surah, and I want you to not just read it in the Arabic, but also read its translation. And using some of the tips and pointers that I'm going to provide you today, inshallah, to try to engage with the meaning of the Quran, inshallah. So let's get started. Before we begin, we had a little bit of an introductory discussion. And today we're going to be beginning with the very first, and in my upcoming lectures, I'm going to be able to sprinkle these types of lectures throughout. Meaning today I'm going to do a quick lecture on how to read the Quran, how to recite the Quran, but inshallah, hopefully in the future, I'll be able to do a little bit more detailed in tafsir and how to understand the Quran and how its meaning and revelation, etc. All of those I'm going to go through, inshallah. So before we begin, whenever we read the Quran, one of the first things that most of us should, and but the thing is, it's a dual-edged sword, and I'll explain to you what I mean by that. The Quran is definitely a book from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it deserves its due respect, which means that we should not, quote unquote, be dirty or disgusting when we are reading the Quran. We should not be reading it in any odd place. We should be clean. We should be when it comes to actually holding the mushaf, there is a difference of opinion whether you need to have wudu or you need to make wudu, etc., etc. What I want from you, or what I want the purpose of this lecture to be today, is I want to remove the barriers that people create between themselves and the Quran. What do I mean by that? For example, one of the barriers that it used to be in my life, that one of the reasons that I had, or I wouldn't pick up the Quran, is because I considered it, or because before I knew about this in detail, I considered it absolutely mandatory that in order to read the Quran, I have to have wudu, which according to the research I've done, it's actually highly recommended, but it's not absolutely mandatory. And the reason it isn't absolutely mandatory, and one of the things that I realized, that it's not possible for a non-Muslim to then read the Quran. Because why? You can only establish wudu, you can only have ablution if you are Muslim. That's the only way a wudu can be established. And if you make it mandatory that the Quran must be read before wudu, that means non-Muslim can never read it. Whereas the Quran is absolutely essential for non-Muslims, not just Muslims, but it is much more essential to non-Muslims who have not accepted Islam. Therefore, one of the barriers that I would like to remove in your mind, one of the first things that I would like what I would like from you, is a commitment that whatever keeps you away from the Quran, whatever keeps you away from the Quran, whether it be some kind of limitation in that, I must do this, and this before I will ever pick up the Quran. So for example, I must have wudu, I must be in the following place, I must do this. I want you to remove those barriers from your mind as much as possible. In a sense that, eventually, yes, there are many that we should be making wudu when we're reading the Quran. We should be sitting down. We should not be treating the book, with jest, etc. Those are all requirements. But remember, as if you start to make those requirements as a method or as a way of keeping you away from reading the Quran, you should forget it. The Quran should be read, and it should be a part of your daily life, because it is specifically revealed for you. Indeed, when any of us are reading the Quran, we should be reading it as if not it was revealed 1400 years ago to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is all true. But its purpose, the purpose of the Quran, is to provide me guidance, you guidance, and whoever is reading the Quran and encourages, and you will see this is a repeated pattern in the Quran, it encourages them to think, it asks them questions, and it provides them guidance through step by step. Meaning all of this is supposed to be for your benefit. Every word, every recitation is for your benefit. So inshallah, let's get started. So today, what I want you to do, number one, remove all the barriers in whatever prevents you from reciting the Quran. And number two, before beginning or whenever you're reading the Quran, understand very deeply that this is meant for you, that this is specifically addressing you. And in fact, the subject of the Quran and the object of the Quran is you. You are the reason this book was revealed. You are the reason that this book is here. It is for your benefit. So, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. All praise, all thanks is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is the Lord of the worlds. In Surah Al-Fatiha, this is the opening, or Al-Fatiha is the opening or the very first chapter of the Quran. This is the very first chapter of the Quran, the chapter that we recite in all of our daily prayers, 5 times a day. And today I'm going to go through rather quickly, because I believe I already did Surah Al-Fatiha in one of my previous videos, of the different, I think I went into a lot more detail on that one, so I'll keep this one rather quick. All praise and all thanks is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. And what do we mean by the Lord of the worlds? Very first, or some of the very first beliefs, or one of the things that this verse is teaching us to believe. What is meant by Lord of the worlds? The question naturally arises, we only know of one world, right? The world that exists right now, the world that we exist in today. But the meaning tells us that Al-Alameen means of the universes, or the plural, Lord of the worlds. Now, where is the second world? This is the very first, or some of the very first thing that the Quran wants us to know. That the world we live in, that the world we exist in today, according to the Quran, or according to the assertion of the Quran, is not the only world. That there is another world, and we will talk about that in just a second, that is going to come after this one. And Allah is the owner, or the Lord, or the King of both worlds. Meaning, all praise is due to Allah, who is the owner and the Lord of both worlds. And this is something I want you to start becoming in the practice or habit of. Pick up the Quran and find its translation. Meaning, for most of you, the Quran that is going to be on your desk or on your shelves at home, it's going to just contain the Arabic. I want you to find, right now I'm using a website called Quran.com, but I want you to find in any local bookstore, in any local Islamic store, not just a copy of the Arabic of the Quran, but a copy with translation in the language you know best. Some of you know Urdu best, some of you know English best, and if you know English best, that's okay. Find a copy of the Quran in English and start asking these questions for yourself. And what do I mean by asking these questions? Meaning, just like I did right now, right? I read the translation, and what did I do? I stopped at this question, worlds, and I started to ask, why use the plural worlds, S? There's multiple worlds? Why? Because I only know of one world, right? What is meant by a plural? What is meant by worlds? That is a question for you to ask and ponder upon. Meaning, the Quran will slowly start to explain itself. Meaning, if you ask this question now, even if I wasn't explaining it to you, let's assume for argument's sake that you were reading this on your own. Very soon, the Quran will answer this question for you, what is meant by worlds. So this is another habit I want you to develop for yourself. When reading the Quran, don't just read it as if you're just going through it, but ask yourself these critical, analytical questions. What is meant by worlds? Why use worlds? I only know of one world. Why is there a plural? So that is one method I want you to incorporate in your reading of the Quran. Ask yourself questions when reading, and ask the Quran questions that you have in your mind, and I guarantee you the Quran will answer those questions. Next verse. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. The entirely merciful, the especially merciful, or the most merciful, the most beneficent. Now, how is this verse connected to the previous one? This is another question you can ask yourself when you're reading the Quran. Notice that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is praised as the Lord. And Rabb has multiple meanings, the Lord, the King, etc. But you will notice that when in this world, anytime there is a king or a lord or somebody who is an absolute monarch of something, is typically a very corrupt person. Typically, he is a zalim person, somebody who is unjust, somebody who oppresses others. But in the first verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being described as the Lord of both worlds, meaning he's not just the Lord of this world, he is also the Lord of the next world. But immediately after, he is being described as the most beneficent and the most merciful. What do we mean? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, contrary, different to the kinds of lords or the kings that we see in this world, who are corrupt, who are unjust, who are oppressive, despite the fact that Allah is the absolute and complete owner / monarch of both worlds, he is entirely beneficent and most merciful. Now, another question that might arise that in your head, and this is a habit I want you to establish for yourself. Meaning, the Quran is asserting that Allah is entirely merciful and most merciful or most beneficent. One of the questions that could arise, or that might arise, and that the Quran will answer for you. I guarantee you the Quran will answer for you shortly. That if Allah is entirely merciful, the most beneficent, why is there evil in this world? On the one hand, the Quran is asserting that Allah is the Lord of the worlds and He is the most beneficent and the most merciful. That means He is in control. He is the master and owner of the current world, and He is most beneficent and most merciful. But this life hurts sometimes. And many times this life is hard. There is evil in this world. There's people suffering in this world. Many of you listening to this have difficulties in your life. So how is this assertion? How does this compute? And when you start to ask these questions for yourself, I'm not going to answer these questions. The reason I'm not going to answer these questions for you is I want you to start engaging with the Quran in this manner. I want you to start reading the Quran and asking these questions and pondering for yourself. Maliki yawmiddin, sovereign of the day of recompense. Now notice how the Quran in the verse immediately following, if you just thought about it a little bit, answered your question. And what was the question that I just erased for you? That Allah is the Lord of the worlds. He is the most beneficent and most merciful. But why is there suffering in this world? Well, there is suffering in this world, but there will be a day of recompense. And what is meant by that? All those who do evil in this world, everything that is evil, everything that is wrong in this world will be corrected. Sovereign of the day of recompense means within His infinite mercy, in His infinite wisdom, and in His infinite beneficence. Though there is some evil in this world, Allah has created a day of recompense. A day upon which everything that is evil in this world, everything that was wrong in this world will be corrected. And slowly, if you ask these questions for yourself, right? You ask this question. Number one, you asked, how is there multiple worlds? The reason there is multiple worlds is because there is evil in this world. And that evil is going to be corrected on the day of recompense. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the sovereign of the day of recompense, when He raises us and questions us for everything that we did, and anything that was done to us in this lifetime will be corrected on the day of recompense. Slowly but surely, I want you to start asking these questions of the Quran when you are reading the Quran. Next, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. It is only you that we worship, and only do you we ask for help. Or, translated another way, only do you we worship, and only do you we seek assistance from. We only ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help. We only worship Him, and we only seek His guidance when no one else is around. When we are in our heart of hearts, we only ask for guidance and assistance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is only He we worship, and it is only He we ask and seek assistance from. And another question that can arise, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. The reason these are paired up is that asking for help, especially asking for help when no one else is around in your heart of hearts. I covered this in last week's lecture, actually 2 weeks ago, I think. To nasta'in or ista'ana, or ask for assistance, is the kind of asking for assistance when we know no one else can help, when we are in dire straits. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has equated it to worship in this verse. He's saying that, or He's asking us by virtue of this verse to only worship Him and only seek His help in absence. When no one is around, we only ask for Him, for His help, for His assistance. And what do we ask His assistance with? What are we asking in this verse? What are we asking in this? What do we want from Him? What is it that we are praying for? What is it that we are requesting from Him? We are requesting اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. Guide us to the straight path. Guide us to the straight path. I want my life to go straight, to go well. I want my life to be good. I want my life to be well, to be good, to be on the straight path. I want to be correct. And this is a requirement, a need for every human being. For everyone who is listening, this is going to be a requirement. This is going to be a necessity. For the rest of your life, you are going to have umpteen number of choices, an umpteen number of circumstances are going to come your way. And sometimes, most of the times, I'm going to say, you're not going to know exactly what to do. And in this verse, we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us to the best path, to the straight path. And what path is that? Okay, I think I'm going to need to mute everybody again because somebody got unmuted. Okay. Guide us to the straight path. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. The path of those upon whom you have bestowed your favor, not of those who have invoked your anger, nor of those who have gone astray. Meaning, when it comes to the straight path, when we are navigating the straight path, one of three possibilities are open to us. Either we can follow the straight and narrow path that causes our life to go on the straight and narrow path, that causes our life to be happy, of a decent, good life, or we can follow the path of those who, because of their misdeeds, have earned the wrath of Allah, or those who chose misguidance for themselves and went astray. Therefore, in this verse, we say, the path of those upon whom you have bestowed your favor, the path of the prophets, the path of the righteous, the path of the truthful ones, not of the path of those who have earned your anger, nor of the path of those who have gone astray. Meaning, the only narrow and straight path is those upon whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed His favor. And we do not want to be upon the path who have earned the wrath of Allah, nor of those who have gone astray. Now, this is specifically the way that I'm reading these verses, and I'm interpreting these verses is applicable to everyone who is listening. And this is how I want you to start reading the Quran. I want you to start reading the Quran as if it is addressing you. Anytime you open the book, anytime you open a verse of the Quran, and it doesn't have to be a lengthy one. It can be a short one. It can be even a verse. You don't have to do it every day. Perhaps do it once a week, just like we do currently today. Just open after this lecture is over, open to the last juz or go to the Quran.com and find one of the short, so like I'm going to say in the 30th juz, there's plenty of chapters that are less than a page. There are 3-4 verses, 7-8 verses, that's it. Okay, find one of the short ones and start reading it and see how it speaks to you, how it talks to you. It is meant to be for you. You are the subject. You are the objective of the Quran. The purpose of the Quran is to guide you to the straight path, to guide you to the straight and narrow path. It is specifically addressing you. So, one of the things that I want you to take away from today's lecture is I want you to not treat the Quran as something foreign and something in a different language. I want you to start treating it and reading it as if it is specifically for you and not just for the purpose of, when somebody dies or when somebody's born, etc., but as a daily subject that you can reflect upon, that you can turn to when life gets difficult. Next, we're going to begin today. I'm going to say, okay, it's 11:30 already. I'm going to do maybe, let's see. Okay. I'm going to do the first few verses of Surah Al-Baqarah. I'm not going to go a lot into detail because I've already done this. But the purpose of today's lecture, the reason I wanted to do yet again, I've already done this. I've already done Surah Al-Fatiha and I've already done Surah Al-Baqarah. But the way that I want to present it today was I want you to read it as if this is specifically for you. So let's get started. Al-Baqarah, chapter titled The Cow. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alif Lam Mim. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. This is the book about which there is no doubt. There is a guidance for those who are conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, what did we just do just a second ago? We made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provided it by saying, this is the book in which there is guidance. There is no doubt. This is the guidance, huda, a guidance for those who are conscious of Allah. You wanted guidance. You were asking for guidance. You were seeking guidance. Here it is. This is the book. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. This is the book about which there is no doubt. هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. A guidance for those who are conscious of Allah, or who are conscious of Allah. Sorry, not conscience. Conscious of Allah. You wanted guidance? Here it is. What is the characteristic of those who are guided? الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. Those who believe in the unseen, establish the prayer, and spend out of that which we have provided for them. Now let's talk about what we believe when it comes to the unseen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes one of the characteristics of those who are going to be able to benefit from this book is those who believe in that which is unseen, that which you have not seen yet. Meaning, we have seen this world, the world that exists right now, but in the previous chapter, Surah Al-Fatiha, what did we talk about? We talk about Yawmiddin, the day of recompense, the day upon which everything that is evil in this world will be corrected, the day upon which we will be answered for every wrong that we did, and we will be compensated for every wrong that was done unto us. But if we do not believe in the unseen, if we do not believe in the hereafter, because we have not seen it, this will not be of much benefit to us. Those who believe in the unseen and establish the prayer, this is their characteristic, and they spend out of what Allah has given them. These are the three characteristics that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes. Those who will be able to seek or find guidance in this book, number one, they have to believe in what they do not see or they have not seen yet. They have to establish the prayer. And then they have to spend out that from that which we have provided them. Now, what does that mean? Spend out of that which we have provided for them. What is meant by this? One of the things that I talked about in the lecture that I entitled Wealth, or the concept of wealth, was exactly this. That Allah expects us to spend from what we own, from what we have, but never forget that it is He who in fact provided it to us. Eventually, the owner of everything, it is Allah. Why? We're eventually going to die. We're going to leave everything behind. We have provided for them means that whatever we own, whatever money we have, whatever money we possess, whether we earn it through our work, if we go to a job and we earn a living, understand that in order to go to that job, in order to go make a living, we have to have limbs, we have to have eyes, we have to have feet to drive, we have to have feet to walk, we have to have hands to work. And those things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided us. And one of the characteristics Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us is to acknowledge, specifically from you. And this is a question that is going to arise in your head when you're reading the Quran. This is a question that is very likely to arise. I'm the one who earns my living. I'm the one that has to go to work. I'm the one that has to do all these things in order to earn a living. Whereas in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asserting, God is asserting, Allah is asserting that they spend of that which we have provided for them. Allah is challenging one of our fundamental assertions, one of our fundamental beliefs, that the money we have is ours. What Allah is saying is, no, that money isn't yours. That money we provided for you. So now it creates a mental conflict. What kind of mental conflict? On the one hand, you're thinking, this money is mine. I own this. And on the other, Allah in this verse, in the Quran, is asserting, no, that money isn't yours. We are the ones who provided for you. Therefore, we expect you to spend from that, to give to the needy, to give to the poor, to give charity, to help those in need. That is what is expected of you. Now, how do you reconcile this? Whenever you're reading the Quran, I want you to get into a habit of this. The Quran is going to challenge, every time you read the Quran, some fundamental belief that you hold, a fundamental assertion that you hold, and I'm just giving you one example of that right now. An example of that fundamental belief that a lot of people hold is that I own my wealth. I am the owner, the controller of my wealth. Nobody gets to tell me what I do with my money. The challenge that the Quran is presenting in this verse is, no, you don't own what you own. It is Allah who had provided it for you, and therefore Allah expects you to spend out of it. So now when this conflict occurs, you are undoubtedly going to need to think about it a little more. Now, the simple reconciliation, and I'm not going to give you every possible conflict that might arise in your beliefs and what the Quran asserts, what you hold in your head, what you think in your head, and what the Quran asserts. But today I'm only giving you one example. You hold that you think you own what you own. Number one, do you or did you come about your own limbs with which you go to work? Or was it provided for you? Meaning, once upon a time, you did not exist, but you came into this world. What if Allah had brought you into this world without a functioning brain? Which we see in plenty of people all around the world. They are mentally handicapped. They're mentally disabled. They're special. They cannot earn a living for themselves. What if Allah had created you like that? Do you think then you would have been able to earn, or do you really think that money is yours? No. The limbs, the brain, the eyes with which you earn belong to Allah, and He gave them to you for free. Yes, using those you earn, but because essentially your body, your soul, your head, your eyes, your limbs are created by Allah and given to you by Allah, essentially the assertion of the Quran is, everything you own, we have provided for you. And whenever you read these verses of the Quran, this is not the only place this type of conflict is likely to occur. Right? In the very next verse, وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ مِن قَبْلِكَ وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. Another characteristic of those people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing, who are able to find guidance in this book, those who believe in what has been revealed to you, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and what was revealed before you, and hereinafter they are certain of faith. Now, this is something we talked about last week. One of the fundamental pillars of belief is that we believe not just in this book, not just in the Quran, but we believe in all the revelations that came before us. We believe in the revelation of Jesus. We believe in the revelation of Moses. We believe in the revelation of David. We believe in the revelation of Abraham. This is another characteristic Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing in this verse, that you, or the people who are able to find guidance in this book, they're not just the ones who are going to be who believe in your revelation. Meaning, in order to find guidance in this book, not only do you have to believe that this book is a revealed book, but you also have to believe that the previous books, the Torah, the Psalms, the Bible are also revealed books. Meaning, you not only have to believe that this Quran is revealed, you also are going to have to believe that the previous books are revealed in order for you to find guidance in this book. What is this book? What is this verse asserting? If you hope to find any guidance in this book, if you hope to find any benefit in this book, not only are you going to have to believe in this book, you're also going to have to believe in the books that were revealed before. Now, what does that mean? You're thinking, how is it that the Quran is stating that in order for me to find benefit in this book, I have to believe in the previous ones? What do the previous ones have to do with this book? It's a question that is going to arise, right? Yet another question that I raised for you. I'm not going to answer this question for you. The reason I'm not going to answer this question for you is not to leave you in a state of confusion, but I want you to ponder for yourself what it means. If the Quran is asserting, if the Quran is stating that you have to believe in the previous books in order to find benefit in this book, what does that mean? What is it that this particular verse means? I'll give you a hint. This verse destroys one of the fundamental, I don't know what the word to use, but khushfahmi is the Urdu word. One of the things that people think that they're somehow superior, right? That sometimes Muslims tend to think that we are somehow better than others and that other nations were not benefited by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that if you expect to believe in this book, you have to believe also that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is just, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful, and He did not just reveal this Quran, He revealed books before too. He revealed books to David, to Abraham, to Moses, to Jesus. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful to all of His creation. Don't think that by reading this book, you are somehow super special and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is somehow favoring you only and hates other people. No. He has revealed books, not only the book you're reading, but the books that were revealed before you. And if you somehow believe that the previous books are somehow bad, they are just junk, whereas this book is somehow special, essentially you're believing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is unjust, that He treated you to a book. He revealed a book to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but He did not benefit, He did not favor, He did not give guidance to the nations before us, which is not true. This is another fundamental belief that this verse challenges right there. As you read the Quran, these questions are going to come up over and over and over and over again. These type of, I'm going to say, intellectual discourses are going to happen within your head over and over and over and over again when you're reading the Quran. Not just reading the Arabic. Remember, if you were to just read the Arabic, if you know the Arabic that well, then alhamdulillah. But if you don't know the Arabic that well, you're going to need to read the translation. And when you read the translation, these questions are going to arise in your head. And the possibilities are, the next few verses might answer that question. That verse might answer your question. You may ponder that question yourself and you may answer it for yourself. Or that question may not be answered immediately. You may have to think about it a little more, and that answer does not come to you. And when that answer does not come to you, you are going to need to seek assistance. You're going to need to seek guidance. And this is the process the Quran wants you to engage in. The Quran wants you to ask these questions. The Quran wants you to ponder. The Quran wants you to think. The Quran wants you to do this. So hopefully today, in today's talk, in today's lecture, I have given you a method or a way of reading the Quran. There are many ways of reading the Quran. A way of reading the Quran that is specifically beneficial for you. This is another method of reading the Quran, that you ask, what does this mean? How is this applicable to me? Why should I care? These questions are important for you, and this is how you are going to ponder and understand the book of Allah. So today, the only purpose of today's lecture, and hopefully if I am able to achieve this, I think I would have achieved something good. That if I am able to ask you, or if I'm able to get you to read the Quran with this type of understanding that it is for me, and to start pondering and to start asking these questions by reading its translation and to truly ponder its meaning, I think I would have accomplished something good. So I'm going to end today's talk there. I encourage you to read the Quran, number one, as if it is, its object, its purpose is for your guidance, for your benefit. And number two, to start asking these questions and pondering these questions as you go over and read the Quran. Jazakallah khair, everyone. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdika wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. I'm going to open up the lines for questions. Oh. I think Huria dropped off. I think she had to go to work. Okay, any questions for today's topic? Any comments, any concerns? If not, okay, if anybody's trying to talk, you're muted, by the way, so I can't hear you.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम फैसल बेटा।
वालेकुम सलाम खाला।
आज ना ये माशाल्लाह बहुत अच्छा लेक्चर था। वाकई हम लोगों को बहुत जरूरत है कि हम लोग ना ये कुरान पे तदब्बुर करना शुरू करें, यानी कि पॉन्डरिंग अपॉन करना शुरू करें, जिसे कहते हैं ना
जी,
खास तौर पे बच्चों के लिए ना।
And by the way, this is the only way you're going to get hooked on the Quran, right? If you read this, by the way, I've tried it and it's very difficult. The Quran without its translation, without its meaning, is very difficult to get hooked on. The reason is you're reading as if it's just a bunch of sounds. You don't really know what it means. It's hard to do. But once you start reading the meaning and specifically understanding its meaning, somebody just turned their video on, make sure by accident.
Sorry.
No problem. No problem. When you're reading and when you're pondering it like this, that's the way you're going to start to truly appreciate the Quran and truly understand how it applies to you and truly start to engage with the Quran. Otherwise, it's going to become difficult to read the Quran. So yes, you're right. Tadabbur is absolutely necessary. The reason is this is how you are going to be able to engage with the Quran yourself, that this is applicable to you specifically. You're muted again, Khala, if you need to talk. Unmute yourself. Okay. Okay. If there is nothing else, Jazakallah khair everyone for coming. Inshallah, I will see you guys next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I don't know last time.